Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Public Works to order on this May 20th day. We'll start with roll call.
Alderman Eisenach. Here. Alderman Stepnick.
Here.
Alderman Perkins. Here. Alderman Lewis. Here. Alderman Marshall. Here. Alderman Grotti. Here. Alderman Rapella. Here. Alderman Nichols. Here. All are present.
Thank you for that, Deputy Clerk. Our first item is item C, which is public comments on any matter listed on the agenda. Anyone from the gallery like to speak on what's on the agenda? Indicating no, we'll move forward to approval of the minutes of the Board of Public Works, and I will open it up to Alderman Rapella.
I'll make a second to approve the Board of Public Works minutes for May 6th, 2024. I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Second by both Randy and Ted.
Good job.
Okay, anything further, any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are approved. Our first discussion and action item is the urban non-port point source information pertaining to the stormwater quality management plan, and we'll open it up to our director.
Thank you, Chair. So just to give a brief introduction before I hand the mic over, we have been working since 2022 with McMahon on updating our citywide stormwater quality management modeling. And we, in 2022, applied for and received an urban non-point source planning grant. We received, I think it's $85,000 of an approximately $170,000 planning initiative. So we've updated McMahon has updated our stormwater pollution prevention plans for both Bucklands and the city garage as a part of this, and then also our citywide modeling. What you're going to be seeing after this presentation is a related stormwater utility increase that would go along with what our plan is proposing. So just wanted to put that out there. That's going to be our next item that we're going to discuss, and then I'm going to hand it over to Nick, who is going to present our findings from our modeling. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We could advance. So the reason we're doing all of this, it all sort of starts with that Federal Clean Water Act. It basically, EPA basically requires each state to identify any water bodies that are impaired by a certain pollutant and to identify what those pollutants are and how it's affecting the water body. If you remember the days of the PCB, this is the list as to why the Fox River was listed for PCBs. Could advance. Other reasons that these water bodies are on this federal list is for the sediment and the phosphorus pollutant. The sediment and phosphorus pollutant, so on the left photograph you can see where the Fox River discharges into the Bay of Green Bay. That was after a spring rainfall event a couple years ago. You can kind of see the clear blue water in the background and then the chocolatey water coming in under the bridge there. Likewise, on the photo on the right, that's actually of the Fox River. You could probably do the same thing in Lake Winnebago, but basically you just dip in the cup in the water body during the middle of summer, and that green color is basically algae growing due to the phosphorus nutrient. So these are the pollutants of concern that have been identified for our local water bodies. So once those pollutants are identified by each state in the nation, then the EPA requires that a total maximum daily load be prepared to address those pollutants of concern. So in this particular TMDL, it was for the lower Fox River Basin, which extends from the outlet of Lake Winnebago all the way north to the Bay of Green Bay. And basically any of the named water bodies there that are shown in red are essentially impaired by sediment and phosphorus pollutants. So this TMDL was approved back in 2012 by the DNR, and since then the city's been kind of working towards satisfying that goal. More recently, in 2020, the DNR prepared and the EPA approved a TMDL for the Lake Winnebago system and everything that drains to it. So it's basically the whole upper Fox and Wolf River basins essentially, because the Fox River, like some of the other water bodies shown in red on this map, are also impaired by those nutrients. So the way that these total maximum daily loads get implemented is through permits through the state of Wisconsin. So again, it starts at the federal level. The EPA requires states to create a permit, and if they fail to do so, then the EPA creates it for them. But basically the city, or the DNR, did create a permit, and the city's been operating under its permit since about late 2006. We actually anticipate getting a permit renewal in 2024 or 2025 as a city. Likewise, all the other communities in the state that are covered under this permit would also be renewed. And those TMDLs basically get implemented through your permit. So that's how they come to fruition, if you will. We also have a lot of other permit requirements, like just educating the public about what they can do to help improve water quality, as well as public involvement. We have illicit discharges. That's where the city has to go out and do observations of storm sewer pipes where it's discharging into a stream or river. And if there's flow coming out of the pipe when it's not raining, you kind of ask yourself, why is it flowing? And if you see flow, then you test it to see if it's got some bad stuff in it. And if there's bad stuff in it, then you got to try to figure out where it's coming from. Obviously, sanitary sewers, they run all the time, but our storm sewers really are most likely running when it's raining out. So like Miller Park had a pipe interconnected for sewage into the stormwater, and that's how they found that, a couple decades ago, was through this program. So mistakes happen from time to time, and that program is intended to identify those challenges. We also have construction site and post-construction stormwater. Those two are more geared towards development and just the construction industry, if you will. So construction sites would be just making sure we get our silt fence up, so we have an ordinance that accompanies that program, and then also stormwater management. That would be putting in wet detention ponds, things like that when they do their development. And again, we have an ordinance as a city that kind of supports that program. Municipal pollution prevention, that's really about the city's operations. As Laura mentioned, we updated the Buckland and the city garage pollution prevention plans just because it's sort of like almost an industrial site when you think about the operations that happen there, from de-icers for road salt and things like that, fleet maintenance. So the point here is just from an operations standpoint, doing a good job as a city to make sure that we're not introducing pollutants into the waterways. And then the last one is the stormwater quality management. That one is really about this modeling and working towards compliance with these total maximum daily loads for sediment and phosphorus. And that is quite honestly the expensive part of this permit. So how do the pollutants move through our system? Basically, when it rains or we have snow melt, that water basically falls on our lawns, on our streets, on our driveways, on our roofs, and as it's running across the surface of those different pavement areas, it's basically picking up those pollutants. Sometimes the pollutants can be coming from our trees or our grass clippings. In the spring you see all the pollen falling on the roadways, or in the fall it's leaf litter. But even our automobiles, right? Like your brake pads are wearing down. There might be leaks from the vehicles. All that stuff ends up on the parking lots and streets or the lawns, and then that water picks up those pollutants and carries it to our storm sewers, which very efficiently discharge it into the river or the lake. So the idea here is to try to reduce those pollutants that are moving through our system, particularly as it relates to the sediment and the phosphorus pollutant. As a city, We discharge primarily to two impaired water bodies. One would be the Fox River, and the other would be Lake Winnebago. So the Fox River, you can see the city's corporate boundaries up here. The yellow area is the parts of the city that discharge to the Fox River, and that orange area, more so the east side or Calumet County area, would be the part that drains into Lake Winnebago. So that's just basically how the lay of the land as far as the city's storm sewer system is concerned. So the way we try to reduce the sediment and the phosphorus pollutants is we will go out and do street sweeping of our curb and gutter areas. When the vehicles drive down the roads, that light wind, it just kind of pushes all the debris to that gutter line, if you will. So in the spring and fall in particular, we can collect a good amount of pollutants that accumulate in that gutter line. But obviously we sweep year round for that same reason, but heavier loadings on the phosphorus side or the nutrient side happen in the spring and fall period. So that street sweeping can be an effective tool. We also have underground devices, proprietary devices like vaults and things like that can help remove some of those pollutants. Grass swales along roadways, we as a city, we tend not to have very much of that. We have mostly curb and gutter streets, but we have some swale areas that can help with some of the pollutant removal. And then bioretention, rain gardens, these types of devices are called many different things with some variations to them. But basically it's a filter that removes some of the pollutants through filtering it through a soil. And then certainly our workhorses tend to be our wetlands and ponds that we have as a city, just because they provide some flood mitigation, but also some most times cost-effective treatment. So,
Can I ask you a question about the grass swales?
yeah,
Are
absolutely.
you saying that that's a positive or a negative thing? Because I would think it's a negative.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on where you are in the state. Like if we're out in Wapaka or something where it's sand country, the water goes into that soil really well because it's sandy. In our area, we tend to have clayey soils, so it's just a little harder for that water to infiltrate into those soils, so that we tend to see wet conditions in the bottom of ditches for that reason, because of our clay soils.
So I know you're located in Fox Crossing, and a lot of Fox Crossing has the grass swales, pretty much a majority of it, and that's what's going out possibly to Lake Winnebago or into our retention areas. So what do you know as far as your location being in Fox Crossing, what they might be doing?
Yeah, I think
I don't see any new storm sewers going in. I see roads being repaired without any storm sewers. And, I know we have one person here in the gallery that lives on the water that has a real issue with the water, especially around July and August, where it turns pure green, sometimes blue. And every time I see those swales, it kind of disturbs me. And on top of that, too, for years and years and years, Appleton has been throwing all their leaves, branches, whatever, into the streets. And of course, that's going out through the storm sewers and that, and I don't know how the DNR ever allowed for that. So swales, to me, are a problem and should be corrected with a storm sewer.
you said a lot. I could unpack each one of those in about an hour conversation, but
Put it in a nutshell.
yeah, in a nutshell, grass swales have their place, but it's not the right tool in every community. And as I mentioned, we tend to have a lot of clayey soils here in the city of Menasha. And for that reason, I think that's how we ended up with a lot of more of the curb and gutter. Plus we have sidewalks and things like that. Fox Crossing generally would be converting their rural roads to urban roads, like when they're putting a trail or a sidewalk along it, because that's generally where the ditch would be.
A sidewalk?
Okay, maybe not sidewalk, but trails. Yeah, so I don't know that the village of Fox Crossing has a plan to retain or keep going with swales,
This is why I bring it up, okay?
Yeah.
Because this is an issue, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
people complain about Menasha's taxes, but you know, our taxes are going to be a little higher because we do what's right
Yeah, I
for
think-
our environment and for our lakes and rivers.
Yeah, I think each community has, you know, a vision for the community, and I think that's part of what you all do is trying to set that vision. You know, like Grand Chute is trying to move to swales, but that's how that board currently feels about the stuff.
Even the taxes.
Yep, and funding of the roads, and I'm sure you've, seen some of the articles. So.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's just sometimes when we gloss over these things, I want to make a point why things are the way they are sometimes.
Yeah.
And this is another perfect example of why Menasha is ahead of the game on this type of stuff.
Yeah. So those are some of the tools. There's a lot of tools in the toolbox, but these are the normal ones, I would say. This is an overall view of the city and how these different treatment devices are utilized and where in the city. So the bigger infrastructure pieces that we have would be the wet detention ponds. Those are shown with the dark blue hatching, if you will. And generally the orange area is what is draining to those darker blue shapes. So we have a couple that were done when the 441 project happened. If you remember the Taco Pond, which was sort of a joint project between the city and the village, I don't know, probably 15 years ago already. And then when the DOT said they were going to come in and expand 441, there was an opportunity that was created there just with the roadway realignment to try to work with the DOT to provide treatment for their highway project as well as the parts of the city that drain to those facilities. So the DOT actually expanded those ponds for the benefit of the city and themselves back a number of years ago when they expanded the highway. And then as part of that arrangement, it didn't really cost the city money, but we had to take on maintenance responsibility for those ponds just because, you know, that was sort of the negotiated arrangement with the DOT. So that was a good benefit, I think, to thrust us forward. We have a number of other stormwater facilities, you know, on the east side, like the Lake Park area, our TIF district on the east side of Oneida Street, and some other areas throughout the community. But basically those areas where we have those wet detention ponds, we're achieving probably an 80% sediment reduction and maybe a 60% phosphorus reduction compared to doing nothing. And that is much higher than street sweeping or grass swales, things like that. So that's why I say they're sort of our workhorses from a pollutant reduction standpoint. The gray areas on here would be areas that aren't necessarily being treated by a structural device. Those would be where the street sweeper is running. And then we have some other biofilters and rain gardens throughout the city, but those tend to be smaller footprint areas or watershed areas. So, but basically those are the type of practices and the location and coverage here in the city. So as far as where that takes us today for a water quality, so this table summarizes where we're at in 2023 as well as where the TMDL requires that we be at. So let's just take the Fox River. For the Fox River watershed, we have about 2,200 acres in the Fox River watershed, and the TMDL requires a 72% sediment reduction. We're achieving about a 33% reduction with these practices that I just took you through. Likewise, the TMDL requires a 41% phosphorus reduction, and we're achieving about 23% currently. On the Lake Winnebago side, we actually aren't required to get a sediment reduction for those 712 acres, though we are achieving a 43% reduction, so good for us, right? The big challenge here for Lake Winnebago is that phosphorus reduction, and a lot of that has to do with the LJ and that green color that we were looking at. We know that that's the big challenge for Lake Winnebago. And the TMDL requires an 83% reduction, which is a massive number. And we are currently at about a 30% reduction. So a long way to go with Lake Winnebago. But the nice thing about Lake Winnebago is when we do something in that part of the city, those water quality benefits partially transfer down to the Fox River because the Fox River is downstream of Lake Winnebago. So what you'll see is the plan that we had done for the city, gosh, that was the last plan, maybe 8-10 years ago, I can't remember, something like that. But we didn't know what those numbers were for Lake Winnebago yet. There wasn't a goal established. So all our effort was kind of focused on the Fox River side. So we weren't really spending any money on Lake Winnebago because we didn't know what the target was. But now we do. So a lot of the things we were planning to do in the Fox River, we kind of cut out because we have to put so much effort into Lake Winnebago, and then those benefits carry downstream. And it's really because of that 83% phosphorus reduction target. So our plan looks a little bit different for that reason in the Fox River watershed, which we can show you that next.
Thank you, Chair. There are many communities who discharge into these bodies of water.
Yes.
So how can we be assured that our requirements are equitable, that they represent our community, what we can achieve, and that it's the same for the other communities as well?
Sure. So that 83% reduction target is the same reduction target that everyone is required to meet. So the way the TMDL works is they add up the load from the wastewater plants, they add up the load from agriculture, they add up the load from Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, anyone that's discharging into Lake Winnebago, and they add it all up and say, okay, this is what's going into Lake Winnebago currently. So if everyone reduces their discharge to the lake by 83%, then we will meet the water quality target for Lake Winnebago. But because there's so much phosphorus in Lake Winnebago and the sediment in the bottom currently, even if we turned off that phosphorus today, it would take about 150 years for the lake to fully recover, where you'd actually see the benefits in the water. So that's just aside from going in and dredging Lake Winnebago, and then you'd have to do something with that material. So they're focused on trying to turn off the load by having folks reduce their discharge of phosphorus to the lake, and everyone's got to do their part for it to work. But even after everyone does their part, it's going to take about 150 some years for the lake to fully support that fishing and swimming and those public uses that have been identified for the lake.
So the total reduction for Lake Winnebago is 83%. That's the total requirement, and then each community needs to pitch in towards that 83%. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, so each community, so like Sherwood, Harrison, City of Neenah, Oshkosh, Font, they all have the same 83% target reduction, is basically what I'm saying. Even agriculture has an 83% reduction.
Okay, so we all have an equal
Yes.
reduction,
Yes.
not necessarily equitable.
Not necessarily, it's,
Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to be sure I was understanding
yes. How it,
the situation.
yeah, and the challenging part for the water bodies is that the state can regulate the wastewater plants like Menasha, and I'm sure you all know that they have their phosphorus challenges and are planning plant upgrades to kind of deal with that, their permit requirements and their required reduction. And then urban stormwater, they can regulate you all just through that permit. But the state doesn't really have a way to regulate the agricultural side of the equation. So without them voluntarily kind of coming forward and meeting their 83% reduction, the spigot's not quite turned off yet, and then the clock on the 150 years doesn't begin, if you will. So,
All right.
So there's challenges, but I think the DNR is just like, we're trying to do what we can here. So.
Thank you.
But it's on the backs of the permitted communities, so.
Yes, it's on the backs of the communities.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So to meet those percent reductions, like the 83% phosphorus, and then on the Fox River side, the pollutant of concern is more the sediment. But what we're proposing is some of the blue watersheds up here would be some additional stormwater facilities that have been identified. For instance, on the north side, there's a blue watershed area that drains to that red pond, the red shape there, which is an existing DOT pond. And there's a storm sewer going in for the Valley Road project, which will then bring that water into the pond for treatment. So that area will be completed, you know, probably in the next 2-3 years, that storm sewer project. So that kind of gives you a feel, and that's really the urbanization of Valley Road project is going to drive that. And then there's a couple other facilities that are in the CIP currently, I believe. But this is a long-term CIP that we have identified here. I think we're out like 50 years to meet the numbers here for the city. That's just an affordability aspect to it. The red shapes that are up here are areas where it's like a supercharged phosphorus removal system where we kind of go in and we add alum, where we're kind of hoping that phosphorus kind of flocculate together and settle out quicker. So it kind of supercharges our existing ponds or the couple of new ponds that are being proposed here. But each of those red areas up here would be one of those stormwater facilities that would have an enhanced phosphorus removal system added to it. And then we also have one spot, more of a demonstration, you know, to do like a permeable pavement kind of area, just to see if that's a tool that the city likes or not. But based on the evaluation, it was a little difficult trying to find areas where we could take that water and try to filter it through the ground, just because of our high groundwater that we have out here, particularly around the lake, or, you know, bedrock, or our soils, essentially. So that kind of reduces the feasibility of some of those infiltrating type devices for us. So this is just an overall concept here, if you want to go to the next slide. So again, that plan, we have some existing swales and biofilters and proprietary devices. We have about 11 existing wet detention ponds. We would be having a high efficiency street sweeping program about twice per month. With parking controls, and what that means is that when the street sweeper's running down the road, if they have to drive around all the cars parked in the gutter line, they're not picking up the stuff where the car was parked. So the idea is if you have a parking control ordinance that restricts parking on that day when they run the sweeper, and it could be odd even addresses, it could be on garbage collection day, there's lots of ways of doing this, but the point is you're trying not to have that sweeper drive around the cars that are parked on the road when they're doing their operations. So as time goes on here, we might bring forward a parking ordinance that just helps support that street sweeping program.
I actually believe we do that. We have odd even days, overnight parking, so you're not allowed to park on the street overnight. And the sweepers do go early in the morning, you know, so it kind of is addressed already here in the city.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
There would be some existing private ponds where there's just some maintenance agreements, it's just some legal paperwork, if you will, where if we can get those agreements in place, then we would take credit for the private facilities that are currently in the ground. There would be 6 new wet detention ponds proposed, which would be retrofits, and then 14 of the wet ponds, some of them would be the 6 new ones, but some are those existing 11. But in total of those 17, about 14 of them would be retrofitted with this enhanced phosphorus removal system. So there'd just be like a little building there just to store the materials in there, and then a pump and so forth. So that really is what that consists of. And then there, as I mentioned, there's just one area for permeable pavement. And then if we have future growth in the community, you know, that can also help us kind of work towards some of the goal. So when we ran the fiscal analysis on what I just described, again, these are just some of the acreages in the different watersheds, but we're estimating that capital cost to be about $11 million. Certainly there's operational maintenance costs that kind of go along with that, but we took the city's current stormwater utility budget and just kind of populated forward inflation and additional, that capital cost of that 11 million, sprinkled through that period of time, made some rate adjustment assumptions that kind of went with that, and 50 years is sort of where we landed. And again, this is just, it's like a blueprint or a guide. It's going to change over time. It's not going to be faster than 50 years would be my take. If for some reason there's a location where we're not able to secure the land for a retrofit, or we can't get a permit from the DNR for something, it would probably push that 50 years out further. And we've even talked to the DNR about that, and they understand. So that's sort of so we're thinking by 2074, I think it is, that would probably be the soonest that we would hit that 83% and all the TMDL numbers for that spigot to be turned off, or at least our part of it.
So when you talk about capital costs,
Yeah.
are you talking about physical? I know you sort of indicated the others too, and that's a issue I've had with our community here, is that we take a lot of this stormwater money and apply it towards salaries and other things because, well, allegedly they're working on stormwater issues, or we calculate a percentage that they might be. So are you talking strictly capital, which is, the CIP of it?
Yeah, the 11 million would just be strictly capital costs. In your utility budget, you have all those other, like salaries and things like that, operation and maintenance kind of things. And obviously as you build more facilities even, you have your operation and maintenance costs go up as well, right? Because as you have more facilities to maintain, that's just a natural,
You mean like development? Is that what you mean? What do you mean by facilities?
Even when you have a wet pond or that type of treatment, or you got your street sweeping, right? Street sweeping is almost more of a operation maintenance kind of activity, unless you're buying a new street sweeper. That would be like a capital cost, but just running the street sweeper and paying the individual to run it, to help with that part of the water quality, those would be more like operation and maintenance costs to me rather than capital. But capital costs would be physically building a pond or retrofitting an enhanced filter or building a permeable pavement type system. So, and I know we have this big long spreadsheet that we can talk through if you'd like to, but that is basically kind of lays out, that fiscal aspect of it. That was also submitted or included in the exercise here that for the planning activity.
Yeah, under 2040, I was wondering, no, I'm just kidding.
And I don't want you to get hung up on these details because we had to program in some things. Obviously, the closer it is timeline-wise, there's more confidence, but even as you do your capital improvement plan from year to year, things move around, and it gets really hard to look out 10 years. It gets really hard to look out 40 years. So you got to take this with a grain of salt. There's things that are going to happen in the future that none of us can think of, right? Like the 441 project, that was great when it happened because it created opportunities for stormwater retrofits that I probably couldn't think of, like before they said they were going to do it.
And another one is the Bryn building here.
Yeah, the Bryn, exactly.
Whether people realize it or not, because the Bryn was built, we were able to capture those stormwaters in this general area here.
Yes.
And actually, I think at some point, this committee or the full council, which it is anyways, should really look at what our future ones are, because that report was done by Mark Radke many, many moons ago. And I think some of the council might be surprised where some of these future retention ponds are being proposed. So, and if they ever will, and I know we've talked about the 9th Street boat landing area, and the other day I rode by, there wasn't a parking stall to be available, you know, and for us to probably try to take a good portion of that, I don't know if that's going to be a good idea, and if we have to renew that report at some point. But, you know, Mark Radke has been gone now how many years? Probably more than almost a decade now. So, but I think that should be shared at some point during a Public Works meeting, at least where we're going to go in our next step. Because we were fortunate that Bryn came around, and the city, what was it, like about a $800,000, $900,000 retention spot, and at one point we thought it was going to be almost 2 million. So happy that it turned out the way it did and everything. It was really good for the community, not just to have the Bryn, but to be able to deal with these issues that were required by the state.
Yeah, and I think the conversations with staff have been, we all got to kind of keep our eye out for other opportunities that we can't think of right now. And that's why this document, it's a living planning document. You know, it's going to look different again in 10 years, but we have to have a game plan to shoot for meeting that 83% and these numbers. But that's what it is. It's, you know, what we have proposed is probably not exactly what's going to get built, and there'll be new opportunities that present themselves, and some of them might get built, you know. But again, it's a blueprint to kind of keep us on track, provide a guide, but it's not cast in stone by any means. So, yeah, again, with the planning grant, this was mentioned kind of at the beginning, just with some of the things that we were able to accomplish through the process, was really kind of getting your plan up to date with the new TMDL and kind of reevaluating how those benefits carry from the lake into the river and how that affected the Fox River side of it. And then laying out that fiscal analysis with the timeline, updating and creating pollution prevention plans for those different, for the Public Works facility really in the Buckland site. So yeah, we're just to that point now. We're ready to kind of close out the planning grant, and obviously, you know, your permit is always there, and it has certain requirements and timeline things associated with it. So you just kind of keep plugging away at your permit. But the nice thing with the planning grant, it kind of helps thrust you forward from time to time with these planning efforts, so that then you can kind of change your focus to the construction side and looking for opportunities. So.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions with that before we move into the next piece, if that's okay? Item number 2. I don't know if you need to say anything or if I'm okay to go ahead.
That's okay. Laura, just the Buckland area, which number is the Buckland area on this sheet? Where is that? 1 through 18, or where is it? 1 through 4?
It's not a stormwater treatment facility.
Okay.
It is required to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan because of the potential for when it rains, for any of that material to run off.
Sure.
So as Nick had stated, it's treated kind of like an industrial site. So our city garage and Buckland are our 2 properties that we are required to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. Okay. So it's a big, thick document. If you're ever interested in reading it, I can send it along. But it's just for monitoring. We monitor, we have to inspect, making sure things aren't running off where they're not supposed to be for our stockpiles.
Understood. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So jumping into the next piece, we in 2020 fall had proposed a rate increase of 15% to be initiated at the start of 2021, and then to do a rate increase every 3 years to keep up with, inflation, operation and maintenance changes of costs, capital improvements and such. We did not want to come to you right at the start of the year before this whole modeling was completed. We wanted to make sure that we came to you with the full big picture at one time and didn't have to come maybe potentially twice. So with that said, all of the updates that were incorporated with our proposed 50-year action plan, we are proposing, as was indicated back in 2020, a 10% rate increase. And it was intended to be every 3 years, but based on the updated plan, we're looking at potentially a 13% increase in 3 years. So, you know, we can do every year, we could do every 5 years, we could do stay on track with every 3. It's really at what you feel comfortable with. But we would propose the 10% to stay on track at this time. Moving forward here to make sure we're capturing everything we need to capture in the stormwater utility. I did include in the packet a comparison of other stormwater utility rates, and on average, it's $135.12 per equivalent runoff unit. We're proposing, with this proposed increase, $125.40. So we're still $10 under the average per equivalent runoff unit. It's 10, and that's per year. This is not a per month or anything like that. I calculated it out. It's just shy of $1 per month per property owner. So it's relatively insignificant. I know these things all add up, but to keep us on track, that is what we are asking for and looking for from this body.
Okay, so my first question will be, I have 2 questions. First would be, how do you come up with the 125.40? I mean, what math did you use to come up with that, just other than 10%? And then the second part would be, I'm not sure if we could really approve the second part of that motion with a 13% planned increase in 3 years, because I don't think that'd be fair to a future council. Because we could keep taxes at 0 right now and then increase them 50% 5 years from now, you know.
And we can, and we would monitor regardless the fund, so I think that's fair.
I would think that if someone makes a motion at all, you know, we would just go with the first part. But could you explain the math behind the 125.40?
Did you want to jump in on that one? It's basically balancing the capital costs that were part of the approved plan,
Okay.
And then also updating in operation and maintenance costs.
Yeah, so in the budget, there's the revenue side, which would be what the city takes in for, you know, the ERU charges. We even included grant money in there once in a while if we're successful getting grant money or any other fees that the city is collecting through that stormwater utility budget. And then that's sort of the upper top part. And then we just made certain assumptions on, you know, growth of that imperviousness as you have more development, right? It's just going to generate a little bit more revenue. And then the next part below that, the expenditure categories, those would be a lot of those capital projects that I was talking about, that grouping there. And then we move on to pond dredging is another header. And that would be probably the existing stormwater ponds, which would not really be a capital thing, but eventually as they accumulate the sediment and the phosphorus in the bottom of it, we have to go in and dredge that material out. That is a cost to it. So we're estimating when those dredging activities would need to occur. And then below that would be the professional services part of it, and the different categories for that. I don't know, street sweeping, if that's one of the I'm not sure.
If you go back about 15, 20 years, I commented that these retention areas would be a great investment for somebody, because everybody's going to be, we won't realize that it'll all be like the Fox River, where we're going to have to go in and clean them. And people laughed, you know, and here we are. And I remember Alderman Taylor said the same thing too when he used to be here. And here we are. The ERU's comparison with other communities, Nina is only at 84. You're asking us to be at 125. Green Bay is high. Oshkosh is almost double, so I don't get that. So it's spread out all over the place for the viewers. Appleton is 175, so that's $50 more. But I just wanted to be able, okay, good, you brought it up so that,
And the ones that are lower, just to add a point of clarification,
Sure.
it's been more than 5 years since they've completed a rate increase, and I would anticipate that they would,
well, you don't go from 84 to 150 or whatever in,
it depends on what their modeling results are and their plan of action would be, that I can't speak to.
yeah.
In our conversations with McMahon, Grand Chute is looking at pursuing an increase very soon, so that number, that's 99,
Right.
whatever, will change as well.
I know one of the reasons Oshkosh's number is probably the highest is they just have had so many flooding issues over the years. So a lot of their reason that their number has been going up is trying to build stormwater ponds and bigger pipes and things like that to mitigate some of those flooding impacts. And then they build water quality features into those improvements. But their big driver is the flooding issue, and water quality is kind of the secondary, if you will.
Okay. Anything else, Director? Otherwise, you're looking for a motion from this committee to recommend to the Common Council? Sorry, I was.
No,
So you're looking for a motion at this point?
yes, and just a point of clarification,
Sure.
in speaking to our finance director, if we could, I know we stated that the 13% planned increase, maybe we don't make the motion with that, but maybe just a planned increase, if we could include that. Not the percentage, obviously it's got to get reassessed, but we just want to make sure we're staying.
How about with a reassessment in 3 years?
The previous, and just, I kind of mirrored the, I mean, it's up to you guys. This is, you guys get to make the motion. In 2020, the motion was made to do a 10% increases every 3 years. Not to say we have to make that same, follow that same path, but that's my,
I'll make a motion at this point, seeing no one's making.
and we do have two
Motion.
motions in the in that packet, just to be clear. One is for the action plan and one is for the rate increase. So I just wanted to clarify that
Yep,
there are two separate
motions.
Thank you.
So at this time, I'll move that we recommend to approve the 50-year capital improvement program and the acceptance of the citywide stormwater quality management action plan. Motion's been made by myself and seconded by Alderman Rapella. Any further questions on that portion? We'll take a roll call.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Next motion then would be to recommend an increase of the stormwater utility fee from $114 per ERU to $125.40 per ERU. That's a 10% increase as of July 1st, 2024, with the idea of bringing this back for possible increase in 3 years.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded by Alderman Rapella. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Does that writing have to be changed up there? Doesn't have to stand set?
I think so, but I think you have the motion, right? I didn't state that there'd be a 13% plan increase in 3 years. I said potential increase within 3 years. That's up to a future body or council, as far as I'm concerned.
Point of order.
Sure. What's your point of order?
I didn't vote because I needed clarification on that question.
And she's changing it right now, so we'll be revoting. If you're not able to do that, we can just move forward and, okay. Wait.
We'll move forward with a voice vote at this point.
Okay.
Alderman Eisenach?
Aye.
Alderman Sevenick?
Aye.
Alderman Perkins?
Aye.
Alderman Lewis? Alderman Marshall? Alderman Grotti? Alderman Rapella? Alderman Nichols?
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. And then we will move on to the street use application for Celebrate Menasha 150. Correct? Do you have anything to add?
I can just give a brief outline. We have been involved with the staff, has been involved with the Sesquicentennial Committee on working through event planning for the Celebrate Menasha 150th. So the portion that is in front of you this evening is for the street use portion of the event. This would be, the closure would occur from Friday, June 21st to Sunday, June 23rd. The motion written here is 6 a.m., but I believe the packet might be 7 a.m. So that, just to clarify, it should be 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock from Friday morning to Sunday morning.
Okay. Yeah, the agendas have it, so.
So I just wanted to clarify that. And then what's going to occur is that the road is going to be fully closed on each end of Main Street. So the closure, per the maps, will start at Center Street and then go to right around the Faith Building, the pedestrian crossing. So Mill Street will remain open. A portion of Chute Street will be closed where those parking stalls are, the curve is. And then Milwaukee will be closed to the pedestrian crossing near the bank. So the alley, the Broad Street alley will remain open as well. The event is on Friday evening and Saturday evening, and because of all of the equipment, rides, everything that is coming in, we want to keep that hard closure during that period, just for ease for the two-night event. Thank you.
All right. Is there any questions for Laura, or someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a
Alderman
motion to
Rapella?
second it.
Go ahead and make a motion.
I'll make a motion to second the street application use for the Celebrate Menasha 150th from Friday, June 21st.
Why are you seconding that? Just make the motion.
Just make the
Oh, I
motion.
just made a motion. I thought Stan.
No, go ahead and read it.
Okay, I thought Stan made the motion.
No.
I'll make a motion for the street use application to Celebrate Menasha 150th from
And
Friday.
give
June-
the times.
Yeah, from Friday, June 21st, from 7 a.m. to Sunday, June 23rd at 7 a.m. And that's sponsored by the Menasha Sesquicentennial Committee.
All right.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Alderman Ted Grotti. For the city attorney, is everything's been placed in order, all the insurances and the approval from the different entities and so far?
Thank you. And good question. You may have noticed that my signature is not there on the city
Yep.
attorney line for the event. You may have seen the Special Administration Committee agenda where that body will review a proposal for special event coverage. If that special event coverage is not obtained by the city, then since this is a city-sponsored event, there would not be a private entity supplying insurance, if you will, as we have seen commonly for all other events. That would fall in the city's CIVMIC policy.
Okay, so sticking on that subject, would it not be better to have a separate policy along with the cities?
That's what I would
Yeah.
recommend, yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Then we will take a roll call.
Motion carries 8-0.
All right, thank you, Clerk, Deputy Clerk. So our next item then is, why am I looking at this different from here? I'm gonna go back. Approval of a temporary relocation of the, is that where we are now? Yes. And the director, you're ready? Yes. Okay, so we're looking for the approval of a temporary relocation of the Eliza D. Smith Library to the University of Wisconsin Fox Cities campus. I can't say the other word, so. Yeah, but I went to school there and we didn't call it Oshkosh, but even though I graduated from Oshkosh. So anyways, the Menasha campus is where you're looking to relocate, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you want to update the council? I think there was some concern about not actually having a written agreement for us to look at, so you may want to address that too.
Sure, I can do
Okay.
that. So as you know, back in February, we came to you with a proposal to move into talks with the folks who own Menasha Center to use that space for a temporary location. As we proceeded with those talks, what ended up happening is we found that there was a number of things that needed to be updated in those spaces. And as we progressed further and further through those talks, it became very clear to us that we weren't going to be able to stay on the multiple timelines that we have for the project if we stayed with that location. And we mutually agreed that we would have to look at another location for the library. So we reached out. If you look at the locations in the city of Menasha, there just aren't a lot of locations big enough that don't already have some other entity looking at them or having already signed a lease with them, or that wouldn't need a lot of work to be done. So we reached out to University of Wisconsin at Fox Cities. I agree with you. I also went to Fox, and it is a hard pill to swallow with the changes. But as we reached out to them, we found that while there are some space limitations that are going to create or have created challenges for us, there's a number of other opportunities there that are actually more beneficial than the Menasha Center space would have been to allow us for programming within the multiple spaces in there. And in addition, we feel like there's some opportunities for partnerships between the different entities that work from the campus, including the Barlow, Weiss, the CAC, and then of course the university in general. So that kind of brings us up to where we are now. The lease per se isn't a lease, and I think that's part of one of the challenges that we why we don't have something to bring forward to today. What it is an agreement. It's basically a memorandum saying how much that we're willing to pay per month, the length of time we're going to be there, and then most of the rest of it is the requirements for the working or having space on the campus, which really have not been an issue for us because almost all of them mirror what we already do in the library. It's things like, we have to keep children safe, we're not allowing weapons onto the campus, things like that.
Any questions? Alderman Rapella.
Thank you very much, Alderman Sedman. Brian, I know you're going to move the library into the Union. What's going to happen to the Union come September when a large amount of students come back to campus and they have no Union to hang out in?
That was one of the concerns as we spoke with the campus officials. For better or worse, the union space has not been as utilized as it was in the past. For instance, when I was at Fox, the school had about 1,800 students. There's about a third of that right now. So there's fewer students on the campus. Again, we're hopeful that there's some give and take on both sides to make this work, but we're hopeful that that extra attention brought to the campus will be a benefit for the campus and us in the long run.
Okay, all right.
I noticed, were you done, Randy?
Yes, thank you.
I noticed, you're asking for 12 months, which is understandable, but in a prior communication, I believe you said it would be somewhere around 100,000, and this 15 times 12 is not even close.
So the number that's given here is basically a worst-case scenario. It would keep us at the 200,000 that was approved when we spoke about this in February. We do anticipate, based on the timelines that I have right now, that this will actually be a 6-month process. So that's where that number came from, that we will be out of there in 6 months. And then again, with this option, we don't have to worry about being tied into a 12-month lease. So once the project is done at the library, we can move right back and then we stop paying for it.
Okay, that was going to be my next question is, are you entering into a 12-month lease then? No, so are you entering into a 6-month with extended, or how?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're in a 6-month lease, and then with the option to extend 30 days at a time, provided we keep paying our bills.
Okay. Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Chair. I was the individual who raised a question, at least I was one individual today who raised a question about not having
Right.
an agreement to look at, and I want to thank Attorney Struve for talking me through that today and for her patience with me. Essentially, my understanding of it is that what we had in February was a letter of intent, so to speak, that that spelled out the terms of the lease agreement, the basic structure of the agreement. And we had also authorized the city attorney and the mayor to complete that negotiation process. Now we're looking at a facility use agreement, which is different than a lease agreement. It's a pretty straightforward agreement between the library and the UW. And this agreement is not yet signed and completely negotiated by the city attorney and the mayor. And after today, conditioned on this approval, that can move forward. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion. Alderman Rapella.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alderman Sevenick. I'll make a motion that the staff recommends approval of the temporary location for the Elijah D. Smith Public Menasha Public Library from the Menasha Market Shopping Center to the UW Fox Cities campus.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
And there's also another one.
We'll take one at a time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries 8-0.
Go ahead, Alderman Rapella.
Okay, thank you very much. The second motion, staff recommends the approval of the city, for the city to enter into a facility use agreement with the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh Fox Cities as negotiated and approved by Alderman Struve and Mayor Hammond, with the monthly fee not to exceed $15,000 and the duration not to exceed 12 months.
Is there a second? Second by Alderman Marshall. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Yeah.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Moving forward, then, we have an approval of a facility use agreement. Oh, we did. Well, then yeah. So with that then, seeing we have no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion been made by Alderman Nichols, second by Alderman Grady. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Have a great evening.